Hi everyone, I'm Michaela, and today I will be answering the question, is humankind inherently good or evil? And I will be reviewing the movie Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. So I'll give an overview of the plot and Sweeney Todd and his character progression throughout the movie as I go through the presentation. To start with, the movie takes place in London in the mid-19th century. The main character, and the one I will be focusing on, is a barber named Benjamin Barker, also called Sweeney Todd. Essentially, Benjamin Barker had a wife named Lucy and a daughter, Joanna. However, he was falsely accused of a crime and sent away by Judge Turpin, a man who wanted to be with his wife Lucy. When Barker returns to London 15 years later, which is when the movie takes place, going by the name Sweeney Todd, he finds out that his wife is dead and his daughter under the care of Judge Turpin, who wishes to marry her. The scene that I am about to show is mostly a flashback to how Benjamin Barker lost everything and became Sweeney Todd.
There was a barber and his wife, and she was beautiful. A foolish barber and his wife, she was his reason and his life, and she was beautiful, and she was virtuous, and he was naive. There was another man who saw that she was beautiful, a pious vulture of the law, who with a gesture of his claw removed the barber from his plate. Then there was nothing but to wait, and she would fall, so soft, so young, so lost, and oh so beautiful.
By looking at a comparison of who Sweeney Todd was before and after he was exiled, we can see the progression of his character from a good person to less of a good person. Although we do not know anything about who Sweeney Todd was before this scene, it is fairly safe to assume that he was overall a good person. We can see clearly that he cares deeply for his family, which is typically considered indicative of goodness. While the rest of the movie is set in dark colors and the drab tones of London, the flashback here is depicted in bright colors. The sun is likely shining, it looks to be a nice day, and all of these factors indicate goodness. Most importantly, we see overall no indications of evil or even the potential for evil in Benjamin Barker's character. Now let's look at the after, when Sweeney Todd had returned to London 15 years after being sent away. In these scenes, we firstly return to the dark, even depressing mood of the rest of the movie. These darker tones present the idea of a moral darkness and evil. It is also clear from the look on Sweeney Todd's face and his voice that he is not only sad about the time he has lost, but angry. At this point, he is not yet aware of what happened to his wife and daughter after he left, but he rightly suspects that his absence wasn't good for either of them. We can also see here that Todd's pain and bitterness are indicators of the evil he is now capable of. One question this scene raises is whether or not someone can be born evil or born good, or whether the circumstances and events surrounding their lives influence them to be either good or evil. We cannot say for certain that Benjamin Barker was born a good man, because we do not know the rest of his past. Nor can we know if Judge Turpin, who had Barker sent away, was born evil. Thus, I don't think this movie provides enough background information or history on its characters to really answer this question fully. However, let us for a moment assume that Benjamin Barker was born good. If so, as we shall soon see, he was influenced to become evil by the events of his life. This fact calls into question the strength of a person's being born good or evil, and if this can be considered to impact who they become as adults. I now move on to the next part of the movie. Sweeney Todd returns to Fleet Street, the place he lived as Benjamin Barker, and he moves in with a woman called Mrs. Lovett, who runs a meat pie shop. Sweeney Todd is, understandably, looking for revenge on Judge Turpin after finding out what happened to his family. However, he is intent on murdering the judge, and here is where the plot takes a very macabre turn. When his first plan to kill the judge fails, Todd decides to practice by killing innocent, ordinary people who come to his barber shop. He and Mrs. Lovett then turn the bodies of Todd's victims into meat pies and sell them. The meat pies actually become a huge success. In the next scene that I will show, I will look at how Sweeney Todd evolved from being a man with perhaps evil intentions to a murderer and an accessory to cannibalism. In this scene, we see Sweeney Todd singing about how he intends to kill people in order to get revenge on the judge.
Shy, not one man, no, nor 10 men, nor 100 can assuage me. I will have you, and I will get him back, even as he gloats. In the meantime, I'll practice on less honourable throats. And my Lucy lies in ashes, and I'll never see my girl again. But the work waits. I'm alive at last, and I'm full of joy.
At the very beginning of this clip, Sweeney Todd says that nothing will placate him or fulfill his need for revenge, except killing Judge Turpin. What really stands out here are two other things that Todd says. Firstly, that before he can manage to kill Turpin, he will, quote, practice on less honorable throats. While the need to kill one person would definitely indicate a shift to evil, that Todd plans to murder innocent people, against whom he has no misgivings, much clearly demonstrates the change in Todd's character. And secondly, we notice that at the end of this clip, he says that he is full of joy, despite his wife being dead and his daughter in the hands of the man who exiled him. He is almost excited to do what he calls his work, which likely refers to both his being a barber and becoming a murderer. So at the beginning of the movie, Todd is angry and bitter and intends to seek revenge on one person. But now he is definitely a much more evil person, who will kill anyone he thinks he can get away with killing, just for the sake of practice, so that he will be ready when the time comes to kill the judge. At this point, it would seem that the answer to our question, is humankind inherently good or evil, would be the latter. Though Todd was initially a good man, the circumstances of his life turned him evil. Most crucially, though, it was a very quick downturn from wanting to hurt one person to intentionally killing and then selling as meat dozens of innocents. I know that in the last slide I mentioned that it appears that humankind is inherently evil. However, this next scene will show a different viewpoint. When Sweeney Todd finds out that Judge Turpin, the man who sent him away, intends to marry his daughter Joanna, he is infuriated by the thought, and this gives him another reason for killing the judge. While his primary motive is simple revenge, we cannot disregard that Todd still cares for his daughter and wants her to be happy. In this song, which I only show part of, Todd is singing about his daughter Joanna while he kills people.
And if I never hear your voice, my turtle dove, my dear, I still have reason to rejoice. The way ahead is clear, Joanna. And in that darkness when I'm blind with what I can't forget, Joanna, it's always morning in my mind, my little lamb, my pet, Joanna.
In this scene, we see a stark contrast between the lyrics that Sweeney Todd is singing and the actions he is committing. While this clip doesn't show murder, we see him preparing to kill someone. In fact, he kills numerous people, perhaps even a dozen, throughout the song. And once again, we see the evil that has been brewing in Sweeney Todd manifest itself in his multiple murders. While his being a murderer, not to mention promoting cannibalism, indicates that Todd has perhaps become completely evil, the song itself and the lyrics say otherwise. So here Todd says that he misses Joanna and that he loves her and wants the best for her. At the same time, there is a sadness to what he is saying, as he knows that he can never get back the time he lost. What the lyrics of the song show is that, despite Todd's being a murderer, there is still at least some good in him. In other words, he is not completely evil, because no matter how many murders he commits or bodies he turns into meat pies, he is still capable of loving his daughter and wanting her to be happy, which is not something that a completely evil person would care about or be capable of. And this fact about Todd, mostly exhibited by this scene, is what gives more meaning to the story and to the plot. Even surrounding all the darkness and death of the entire movie, there is still love and care, even in the most evil person. I would like to briefly consider the last few seconds of the scene I showed. This is a very powerful image, because we see very distinctly the dichotomy between Sweeney Todd's good and his evil. When he smears a picture of his wife and daughter with blood, this demonstrates both the sorrow and love that he still feels for both of them, which represents the good that still remains in Sweeney Todd's character, and which we can see clearly on his face as he looks at their picture. And, of course, the blood indicates the evil and the moral lows to which Todd has sunk as a result of his suffering. With this movie, and especially with the character of Sweeney Todd, we ask ourselves the following questions. Can a person be born good or evil? How does a person's circumstances impact whether they turn out primarily good or primarily evil? Can someone be only good or only evil? For the first question, as I said previously, this movie does not provide enough background information on the characters to come to any conclusions. For the second question, in Sweeney Todd's case, we definitely see the events surrounding his life influence how evil he became. And so the evidence from this movie suggests, perhaps, that a person's life circumstances matter more for their development of being good or evil than how they are born. And I will discuss the third question on the next slide. As to the overall question, is humankind inherently good or evil? The evidence from Sweeney Todd points to the answer being neither, and, at the same time, both. In this movie, we see the progression of Benjamin Barker, a good man who loves his wife and daughter more than anything, to Sweeney Todd, an evil man who is obsessed with revenge, and who murders innocent people and makes their bodies into meat pies to sell. However, the caveat here to Todd's evil is that no matter how much he lives up to his name, the demon barber of Fleet Street, he still loves his daughter, and is thus still capable of being good. If only life were simple enough that we could classify humans as good or evil, but fortunately or unfortunately, it is not. If Todd had been inherently a good person, he would not have been swayed to become so evil by the circumstances of his life. And if he were inherently evil, we would not have considered him a good man in the first place. No one can be entirely good or entirely evil, so I must conclude that humankind is both, that people have both good instincts and evil ones. That was Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street. Thank you for watching and for listening. I will now take any questions you might have.